I hear fire.
They did that on purpose. So
Carbondale?
Yes, so they'd have to bail.
Yep.
Okay, this is a work session, and we are going to talk to Scott Thompson and John Melly about fires.
So let me kind of throw this at Ryan
fires.
real quick.
Yeah.
Ryan called us up, said, hey, after the Pine Ridge fire last year along Highway 82, there's a little bit of enthusiasm to maybe do something, which happens a lot. But maybe Ryan kind of open it with what he would like to see out of this, or where we're going with
Sure,
this.
happy to. So the idea for tonight was just to get the word out on what the possibilities are for wildfire and wildfire protection within the town limits. And we have a presentation that goes through some before and after pics, because I think when you're doing wildfire mitigation, at times you'll see that there's some tree removal or foliage removal, and that can, in some folks' mind, mean that you have a stark image or some sort of clear-cutting regime, but in fact that's not what they employ, and they can put together a really nice plan for various properties that would just help. And of course in our town, as Scott and I discussed, there are some wildfire potential, and so one of the things that we will talk about after we go through here is the possibility of doing a project, and a small project here in town, on town land, and we have a few different options, but to show what the possibilities are, and to show what the result would be, so that people can kind of get used to that notion. And then they can also talk a little bit about the service they can provide for property owners individually that's non-binding, but would just allow people to understand what they can do on their property to help prevent those issues from spreading. So
we have done things in the town before.
Yeah.
We worked on the water treatment area, on the water tanks to protect those. That's been too long ago. We need to redo that, because I went up and looked at it and it's overgrown again.
Oh, you're saying it grows back?
Yes.
Okay.
And if we don't maintain it, we're going to be in the same fix we were before. So there is some stuff that is out there that's just hanging. So I'm going to turn it over to John, and hopefully this will spur a lot of discussion or ideas or questions.
Okay, just so you know, in case you didn't see the agenda, we take a break at 5:45 and have to be back in here at 6. Okay.
Yeah, you have to eat at 5:45 is what I was told.
For 3 minutes, and you get food if you're nice from this point forward.
Okay. Thank you.
So I appreciate the opportunity to present some things to you. Please let me take you down a path, a little storytelling before we get to some pictures. There's some terminology and there's some things about wildfire I think would be beneficial, just some basics for you to maybe understand why we do the types of mitigation we do, or why we think that, and it's known that a lot of these things work. So to start off, wildfires are inevitable. And just like these natural disasters, hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfire is considered a natural disaster. However, 80% of wildfires are human caused. So we actually can control more with this type of a wildfire or a natural disaster than we can, say, with a hurricane or a tornado. Because if we can eliminate human caused wildfires, we're way ahead of the game. Actually, statistics show that because of the human element in wildfires, it actually extends our wildfire season by 2/3. So if we were just left with the good old natural 20% wildfires, they actually do ecological benefits to the forest. I mean, this is some of the common sense stuff. There's no extinguishing our way out of it. Actually, all of our agencies, national and local, ever since the Great Prestigio fire in 1871, which is the day before the Chicago fire, agencies were actually ordered to put out every wildfire they could find. In other words, they didn't let the natural ones occur, and I think we might have been doing ourselves a disjustice by letting forests and areas overgrow. They weren't getting cleaned out. They weren't, wasn't functioning the way it normally should. So when we think of wildland-urban interface, we call it WUI. A lot of times this is what we think of. Okay, we think of the home in the country, up on the hillside, trees and shrubs around it, but we need to relearn how we're thinking about wildfires because this is Mountain Shadows in Colorado Springs, and there have been many others. This could very well be an Elk Run. This could very well be Blue Lake. I mean, the types of fires we are getting. Now, how do we get wildfires in neighborhoods like this? It's the ember shower, okay? These embers can travel half a mile. You could have a wildfire event in Glenwood Springs and end up with embers down here. So not only do we have to think about wildfire mitigation or landscaping vegetation around your home, but you also have to start looking at neighborhoods like this. That neighborhood here that burned down actually was caused by embers, and it traveled fence lines. So your fence, your house is there and your fence touches your house. People here also use mulches and wood type of things in their flower beds. That's how these homes burnt down, and this is basically what an ember shower looks like. Just thousands of these things. So just because wildfires are inevitable, it doesn't mean that destruction is inevitable. And you can do that in two ways. One is wildfire landscape mitigation, and the other one is hardening of your structures. Now, I won't go specifically through these. This isn't really the goal of today's message, but there are ways that homeowners can do things to their home, improve their roofs, improve their decking materials. In other words, you harden your structure. So it isn't just about limbing up your trees and having your landscape done. It's hardening of the home. So reasons for vegetation management, well, as we all know, it improves the soil and improves the ecology of how the forests grow. It also prevents crown fires, and I'll explain what that is. There's different types of forest fires, and if you can imagine, there's ground fires, surface fires, and then of course the crown fires. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to eliminate that latter fuel when we're doing wildfire or vegetation management. You could see the low ground fires will progress up the hill, and once you get to that crown stage, that's when we have problems. If you'll notice the one on the right here, when they get up in the trees, they just run the tops. And those are the fires that we have a big, difficult problem in trying to put out. So if we can keep those fires on the ground, we can keep them where they're manageable. It gives firefighters an opportunity to get in and try to do their magic, and also it tends to keep those fires low so they're not as intense. So hardening of the structure, that's, with roofs and gutters and soffits, cleaning out your, all the leaves around. And usually wildfire mitigation is typically very easy to do. It's just getting a rake out and a broom and cleaning up around your house, eliminating some of those things. You have to start thinking that your home is fuel for a wildfire. You really have to go into it with that mindset. So what can municipalities do? Well, they can certainly set a good example by maybe mitigating some properties they own, or at least help spread the message that there are things that homeowners can do to save their properties. So here's something that we did in another community. Basically, it was a neighborhood chipping project. And in this instance, we went up on a very narrow road. Maybe Oak Ridge Road is familiar to you, but it's really narrow. But we got with all the people that were on the block first. We said, hey, we're going to come through. We're going to actually widen the road easement within the property lines. We were very sensitive to people that maybe didn't want to see the road. So we made sure we got kind of a temperature of what was going on. And basically with Swift Crews, which is the state wildland inmate firefighting team, We went up through there and actually chipped and widened the road. And here's a shot that actually shows how narrow that road is. And as we went along, we made some really good improvements to hydrant locations, clearing those out, even electrical boxes and the like. And so along the way, the neighbors all were taught how to place their piles so that it would be an easy chipping project. And so the neighbors along the way would pile their stuff up, and we went along, we chipped all their stuff up. We didn't chip it and throw it back. We chipped it, put it in a dump truck, and we hauled it out of there. It really didn't make sense for us to just reintroduce the same byproduct that we were trying to get rid of for fuels. So here's an example of another mitigation project that wasn't a neighborhood chipping, and that is, you could see on the left a before picture, and on the right, just to give you a perspective, these are two people in the middle of that pile. And you could see basically what they're doing is using a clumping technique, where instead of clearing out or creating lines or paths, you create this little mosaic clumping pattern. And you'll notice that when the project was done, this is what it looked like, but even better, that next spring, this is what it looked like. And basically, once again, what we did is we eliminated that ladder fuel. In other words, we have little pockets where that fire can go back down. It isn't going to jump on a crown and then run up that hill. That's just one example. Here's another one that was off of Brush Creek Road. You can see on the left, it's thick, and on the right, where we were clumping, you can actually see that, how it looked right when the project was done. And here's what it looked like, I want to say spring before last spring, so about 2 years ago. So it turned out really healthy. It looks good. It's actually kind of a landscaping improvement. The neighbors up there tell me that the elk are just thriving all over the place there, and so it's very noticeable.
First spring after it was finished, I was driving up, and one morning there was a herd of elk, and it brings the grasses back.
Right.
Another quick example, this is Trantaz going up to Starwood. That's an obvious before and after. Before is on the left. On the right is after that mitigation project. It just breaks up that continuity and gets rid of that crowning capabilities. I mentioned Swift Crews. I can't speak more highly of them. They come in, they're out of the rifle facility, very well mannered. They've integrated in our community. We've used them 3-4 years now. It just seems to be a fit that's working for us. Now, not all instances or not all mitigation projects really can use the Swift. Sometimes you do need to go to more of a vegetation management type group, especially when you're close to homes and things where you might want to do a little bit more delicate work. But these guys are great on just getting rid of a lot of stuff in a hurry. Here's another option I thought I'd throw in there. I don't know if you've ever used them before, but they're gaining popularity. You know where the fire was last year in that Scrub Oak area off of, pardon? Yeah, in Pine Ridge. This might have been a great little area for them to run around and nip on some of that. So that's just some of the ideas. Here's some suggestions that people have given me. I don't know Basalt 100%, but I'm learning it. And some of these areas I've driven, but Cedar Drive, I understand, had work done to it at some point in time. Original Road, as you could see there, Midland Spur Well House, I think Scott was talking about that. Aspen Junction, HOA area. And here's one that I just keep bumping up to every time I come to the town hall. I don't know the neighbors up there, but I think that this type of a mitigation project, if you worked in conjunction with them, and the clumping technique where they're not going to just lose all their privacy with a little bit of greening effect, throw some seed in there, I think it'd be a gorgeous example that's close to town hall where people can see it. That's where you're going to get the buy-in from the community is a project that maybe they can stumble on and see, hey, this isn't so bad. As a matter of fact, it looks good. So that was just a suggestion that I threw in there. And then if you'll do me a favor, so I had a movie here. We have to jumble it. And this here is a success story. If a neighbor or a homeowner does all of the things that we're kind of preaching here today, I wanted to show you there are success stories. And there's more of them out there than are on film, but this one just happens to be out of the Colorado Springs area, and I happen to have access to it. So I'm ready whenever you are, and thanks for your help. Maybe you can full screen that thing for me.
I will just
all right.
Ease up on him, John.
James, you don't have to do what he says.
Okay.
We have to put two at one time here for sound purposes.
So the only thing about this is usually it's not as calm as this when the firefighters and the fire's coming, but the firefighters feel comfortable because of the situation. So I really see a level of trust and calmness that we normally don't see, but it's all because they have trust in what's been done on this property.
All right, here we go.
Black Forest Fire is approaching this house that the strike team has been assigned to protect, and they are in position and ready to go to keep this house from catching on fire. You see that the fire is trying to creep up into the trees, but for the most part, this part of the fire was actually a creeping grass fire. Okay, the firefighter is now managing the fuels here by raking them up so they don't travel into the mulch area. And our crew is trying to do everything they can to manage the property here before the fire arrives. So they want to make sure that if there's a gas grill out there, that gas bottle is not out. Here they saw some patio furniture out here, outdoor patio furniture, so they're stacking it up here so it's not spread out all over the place and catches on fire. They're stacking up in one area where they can protect that and make sure that the fire doesn't ignite that. And you see the fire starting to approach here. This is on the side of the house called the Delta sides. Firefighter is now standing, waiting for the fire to arrive to him. He's at the edge of the mulch, and where the grass meets the mulch, he's going to make sure the fire doesn't travel past that line.
I don't know if you can see the hummingbird feeder, but it's starting to swing. You can see that the wind's starting to hit them.
In all directions. You see that firefighter at the back of the house here. He's on the, what they call the Charlie side again, and he's waiting on the fire to arrive to him. Smoke is going to be produced in lots of copious amounts, and you'll see the fire starting to creep to him, roughly at about, looks like about 6 inches every second. The winds are starting to pick up now, and you see a few embers blow across. They're cold embers, but nonetheless, visibility starts getting poor. What the video can't convey to you is that there's a lot of heat being blown in towards that firefighter. As the fire and the heat are coming to him, he has his personal protective equipment on. He also has a heat shield, face shield that is on his face to help filter out the smoke and the hot gases that are coming to him. He's saving all his resources here. What we're trying to do is allow the fire to burn out all the fuel around the house and let it blow right on by, and then we don't have to worry about that reigniting. So we're saving our water resources for when we really, really do need them. And we're just protecting the deck here and making sure that this fire doesn't get into the mulch. Now you see that the fire is trying to travel up the trees, but the homeowner did a good job of trimming those trees back up to about 10 feet so the branches don't catch on fire, the low-hanging branches. Managing the trees like this will keep the fire from spreading into the crown of the trees, which is very bad. And now the fire is starting to burn up to the mulch, and then lots of smoke starting to be produced. I'm taping this from behind the hot tub on the back of the deck, trying to keep myself from having to be subjected to too much heat, mostly my camera. And the smoke comes, and it's pretty much a whiteout. Now this is looking on the other side of the hot tub. I decided to move out of the way here. The firefighter is now applying a small amount of water right where the fire has met up with the mulch. The fire has now passed through, and it's done exactly what we wanted it to do, and that is burn around the house and leave the house intact. I'm shooting now at an angle from where the fire did approach. So this is already burnt out area. So you can see how the wind is picked up. But this is how the fire traveled towards the house. I'm just trying to give you a perspective on how it did. And I see everything is nice and black here, and that's what we want. We don't want a bunch of unburned fuel here. And now the strike team is doing a little bit of mop-up action. Now we're using the water resources to make sure that the fire is dead out as it butts up against the mulch, because the mulch is very flammable, and that's not a good thing to have right next to your house, because the fire will wick right into the house and burn the house down. So guys are on the Bravo side now, and they're pulling up their hose, and then they're going to do a walk around here in just a minute, 360 degree. But in the meantime, they're going to make sure that everything is buttoned up to this mulch is dead out. And they will check that with the back of their hand. Make sure that it is cold and dead out. And that way we don't have to worry about this rekindling. They're loading up their hose and ready to move on to the next assignment, next house to save. You can see that sometimes almost total whiteout, where you couldn't see over the hood of the vehicle, and yet the fire is burning up against the road. But they're moving on to their next assignment and ready to protect more structures. In 5.5 minutes, you've just seen what it took approximately 2.5 hours to do, and that's structure protection at the Black Forest Fire.
Wow. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Scary.
So you see, though, the benefit of eliminating those ladder fuels. That's the only reason it allowed them to actually stay and spend 2.5 hours with the house. So that's the goal, and any mitigation project that you might consider, you should kind of think that pattern out, that you just want to eliminate the ladder fuels, thin it out, even remove the dead and dying, and basically what you're trying to do is mimic fire. That's the goal. So I rest my case, and I'm open-minded to answer any questions.
That was a great film. I mean, clearly they were confident that they had it, but it just seems to me like they could have like not had it in a minute.
No, there wasn't enough fuel there, and if it would have been a crown fire, it would have been throwing those embers, a lot more embers than you saw here. It was hard to see because it's daytime, right. But at night you'll see the embers. But if that was a crown fire, those firefighters wouldn't have stayed there.
No. Okay.
We don't go in front of fires unless we're completely comfortable that they'll be able to come to us and we can manage them. Right now, there's no place in town that we would do that. We would get above a fire or the head of the fire.
Right.
I can't think of any place.
I'm gonna go out for questions on council. Gary?
Oh, just, I'm sorry I missed the beginning of this, but did you guys talk about the funding available to do any of the mitigation?
Right now, we used to be able to get funding from the state and also from the federal government. There's no funding right now.
Okay. So does the district have any funding available?
We could do something, yes. When in Snowmass, we matched. John had a contributor, the town, the fire district, and the contributor all came together. We were able to do that, so there is a way that we can do partnerships. I'm not going to discount that at all.
Okay, because yeah, I look at that as, trying to find ways to get Aspen Junction in the area, some of the areas that you talked about involved in this.
So
try to figure out
the Swift crews are $1,000 a day.
Right.
We can afford a few days of the Swift crews. We just have to pick the right places. Cedar Drives scares the hell out of me for people evacuating and for firefighters going in there. So I'd love to see us, push that to the envelope, right to the edges of the easements. But that's just one area.
But Eagle has funding. Eagle County has funding because they have a whole wildfire coordinator, Eric.
Yeah.
So that and Cedar goes into Eagle. So maybe there's a way to do a three-way partnership.
Yeah. We haven't gotten far enough. We haven't really found projects that we say, yeah, that's the project we want to do. So right now, we're just trying to get buy-in to say, hey, yeah, let's go do one.
Well,
Mark, then Jen.
if you had to do an assessment, John, or Scott, either one, would you prioritize them based on your level of what you think's in the worst condition?
Individual assessments or?
Oh, like the 5 you had listed, you know, Cedar Lane and Aspen Junction. I think that would help us to know where
Right.
to start, you know. And then my second question is probably for Susan or Ryan. Can any of the open space and trail money be used for something like this? You would think it would be
Well,
able to.
you know, technically, if we were on, you know, by way of example, lot K and H, you know, the only issue would be that I think that we've taken the percentage for maintenance, that we haven't kind of super allocated it.
But the other areas we could possibly use that funding? Because I know that's a pretty good chunk every year.
So, the other thought, Mark, is we do something like the chipping program. You know, John's chipping program, one year really wasn't much, and then the second year everybody bought into it because they said, oh my God, they're not clear cutting. It actually looks better, and they had to extend it a day. So maybe we start out at that and maybe do the water tanks up on Cedar and, you know, do some small stuff and then budget for it for next year, and make this thing so we do it every year. No matter what we do, we want to get rid of the dead, dying, diseased trees and brush, and the more stuff that comes to the curb that we can chip, the better off we're going to be. You know, it's like eating an elephant. We're not going to do it sitting down, but if we do it, you know, every year, we're going to make a difference.
You can't be overwhelmed by the project. It's just something that you have to nibble at. And that seems to be a good success pattern, and that's when your community starts to buy in with you, is they see it's something that's being done all the time. If you can include them at any juncture to help with their projects. I tend to like to do mitigation projects that'll also improve the survivability of homes. So if you find hillsides with homes are on the top, those to me lend a little more priority. I know your new apartments over here, America. Yeah, behind there's some woods that have never been touched. If they have, I couldn't tell. And if you take a walk through there, it's thick and dead and dying, and maybe a project like that, since it's a brand new apartment complex.
That whole
At least
area.
you're doing something to maybe help the survivability in the homes of people that live in your community.
One last thing.
Sure.
Up in Snowmass, when was that, John? 5, 6 years ago, we implemented a non-combustible roof ordinance,
I was gonna bring that up, but yes.
which I think is awesome. The the ordinance was written such that John and I wrote it, and they've got options of different materials and different ways to do it. Repairs, you know, if it's a small section of roof that's bad, they can repair it without having to. But I think that would help, especially if it was a major event.
And the cedar fences, you know, in every subdivision we have cedar fences. That's what caught the embers and burned the houses down, majority of Colorado Springs. Just cedar fences. And, you know, you look at Elk Run, you look at South Side, there's cedar fences everywhere. And all it takes is one fire out in a field, and we're gonna lose a couple of houses. You know, it's proven. So as long as we're on, you know, doing changes to the building code, all you have to do is say that the cedar fence can't attach to the house, so they have to have a swinging metal gate to drop that continuity. It's simple as that.
Right. Jennifer.
So I'm thinking of two partnerships. So with BEMC, the Basalt Emergency Management Committee, that I'm on, this has been discussed for the last 2 years, and there is money available with Eagle County. And I see that there's available funds with Snowmass Wildcat, Basalt Fire, and approaching for if we can prioritize areas. That is something that I could see we could start chipping at, is pick an area like Cedar Drive, have the project projected cost, and then approach the two organizations to make this trifecta of matching funds to achieve the goals. And then the second partnership that I'm thinking of is behind Stubby's. That land is owned by Pitkin County.
Us.
It is, it's owned by us?
Yeah.
But it's
It's
closer to the Whitewater Park that Pitkin, oh no, they own the
But
other
Pitkin County
side.
owns up by the Fisherman's Park, and we own.
I got
the
it in
parcel.
first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we own that, and we did budget, well, we put in the CIP about $50,000 worth of improvements
Mhm.
that in the, kind of post-plan.
Right. And that also can match if we can twofold put it together and partner with Pitkin County, especially as a park improvement, because they're very interested in order for the water rights with the Whitewater Park. They need to draw people to the river and into the river and increase user numbers. And so that was an area that was targeted by that committee as needing work and making a plan for it. And if we can come up with those multilateral funding and have multiple reasons, that's win-win for everyone.
Just a quick aside, I just was driving around both sides of the river work today and tried to drive down that road, by Stubby's, and there were so many construction vehicles in there that you couldn't get there. You couldn't even get through there. So I don't know if anybody monitors that for, there's nobody in this truck and this fire truck needs through. I guess you just shove it out of the way, whatever.
Is that, Greg would know, is that private property? It's private.
It's a street, though. It's a street. But anyway, so it sounds like there's some pretty good ideas happening, and I have a thought around kind of what Jennifer's saying, but I guess my thought would be, do we have groups in place that could work with the fire department to prioritize and plan mitigation projects? Do we have them already in place? As Jennifer is saying, the emergency management, Eagle County people, sort of a group to prioritize it, fund it? Do we have that in place, or do we need to create it?
I don't know that we have a fire mitigation group specifically.
But I mean, somebody who could step into that role, as Jen was sort of suggesting that there might
What was
be.
the group that you mentioned?
Basalt Emergency Management Committee?
Oh, the BEMC.
Yeah,
Okay.
BEMC.
And you're
Let's use
saying,
the acronym.
do they have funding from
We do.
somebody?
No, it's another one of our many committees.
Okay.
So, not to throw a cog in the wheel, but I really think that what we need is a representative from the town.
Exactly.
Representative from the fire district. We've already got Eric Lovegren, which is the mitigation person from Eagle County, to come up with priorities,
Yeah.
where we could go, what projects, like you said, Mark, and then figure out the cost.
So,
We're almost too late to get SWIFT. If we're gonna call them, they're spoken for. We could maybe get a day, as soon as the fires start in Colorado, they're gone, because they go on fires.
So what does that
so
do to our
2019? Are we talking 2019?
Fall.
It'd be nice to do something, and we could throw some money at it, a chipping program maybe this year to start, or, some of those town parcels. If we had a town employee to help us prioritize and
Yeah,
come
okay.
up.
Mark, then Gary.
Well, I was just wondering, if we don't use SWIFT, then did you have an alternate team that we would possibly have to pay more money?
We could go to the private sector.
Which
There's
is
a couple.
double probably,
They're more expensive and they're not gonna get as much done.
so.
But there's also an avenue where you dedicate a town dump truck for a day. And I don't know if Basalt owns their own chipper, but then it's maybe everything from a public work day along with maybe volunteer firefighters. I'm not sure. I'm just kind of speaking a little
And
bit.
before we go back to Gary and then Jennifer, I think we need to remember that we are in Eagle County and Pitkin County, so it shouldn't just be the town. It should be representatives from both counties. They also are the ones with budgets. And it sounds like they have already a standing organization within the county that deals with this.
Well, I was gonna
Gary
suggest
and
that we,
Jen.
you know, instead of trying to throw out projects and throw out things right here.
No, not here.
Right,
No.
but we're trying to throw out funding and stuff. It's just, I think the reality is we do need to look at this as a town, and it's something that we need to really start to prioritize. We need to give direction to staff to help us prioritize that with the fire department, with our police department, and I'm sure Pickton County and Eagle County want to participate, because like what you saw on Trentaz and other places, we need to start engaging the private homeowner associations more than we have, and I just think we need to have that coordinated effort to find the projects that have the most bang for the buck and get them in the pipeline, because we do habitat improvement projects and we use Swift crews. They're really not the easiest to deal with because of their schedules on fires. But we have used private crews and they move pretty darn quickly. We did about 60 acres on Hunter Creek and they move pretty darn quickly and they got a good job done. Yes, they are more expensive, but if you want to get these things done and not rely on, you know, crews that also go to fire, this is just a funding piece that we need to solve. So I would say, let's prioritize it, but, you know, also realize that some of the areas you're talking about, we need to get the public fire.
And I think right now we need to prioritize with hand crews. I don't think there's anything mechanical we can do in town. And with your experience with Sky Mountain Park, you know, with the mechanical opposed to hand crews, but I think we want to go into the slow. We don't want, you know, a big project that looks ugly for a couple of years, but I can't, you know, the only thing I'm thinking about is the iron stubbies. It'd be quicker and less expensive to put equipment in there, but then, you know, it's gonna take a while to come back, and I don't think we should do that.
Well, I agree with that. The one we did on Hunter Creek was all hand crews.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, I would pick the ones that have the most bang for the buck. Behind stubbies is not the most bang for the buck. What's really the bang for the buck is kind of what you showed, is those oak hillsides by Aspen Junction behind this building. These are the areas that are definitely,
You know, John brought up something that scared me for years. We have the farmer's market, we have the concerts here. All it's gonna take is one cigarette and we're gonna lose a couple houses.
Right.
So.
Jen?
Living in the Hill District, I recognize there's a lot of diseased trees and there's a lot of work that can be done. And if there were a Public Works representative, we do have Public Works staff that own houses in that neighborhood, and that's a staff idea of someone to work with to get ideas and start that process. And what's interesting about the area too is there is no HOA. So the organization of the people, and there's a large number of older, retired individuals that cannot do, that as neighborhood, we go out and help them. My backyard abuts, and I go out and help clean up brush, et cetera. And maybe that's the spirit that we can go with is.
Well, let me just throw this out because we're kind of running out of time. Ryan, would you be able to kind of coordinate getting a group together of the town and the fire district and the counties and whoever else you think to sort of roll this down the road a little ways?
And would you like to entertain the possibility of doing an example project, a pilot project?
I think this group should decide that, but that sounds like the direction that these guys are suggesting. That
When you say this group or the group that we set up?
No, I'm just saying the fire professionals are suggesting, I think, an example project.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're necessarily in a position with 30 minutes of education to make that decision. I think that should be this group that's more focused on pursuing this idea, short-term and long-term.
Okay.
Does everybody okay with that?
I want to move forward
Okay.
and have a project this year.
Okay.
The 2019 thing does not work for me. I want to do it now and then budget forever because this is our reality.
Yep.
We cannot become a Santa Rosa story. And in terms of like public engagement, I think everybody's scared to death that could happen here. And climate change, that's our world,
Yeah.
fires and floods.
So any last thoughts? Yeah.
I really like Mark's accomplishment with the non-combustible roof in the building code, and I'd like to see that integrated into our
It
building
seems like a
code.
no-brainer, doesn't it? So thank you so much for coming and scaring us even further.
We'll stay in touch.
It's great. It's
We're
great.
available.
So you'll probably be hearing from Ryan, and then I'm hoping that something happens sooner rather than later. And we have,
Join us for dinner. yes.
join us for dinner. We can talk more.
Thank you.
All right? Thanks. We're going to break for 15, 20. Be back here at 6 o'clock. Bernie, wake up. Order. And ask for a roll call, please, Pam.
Yes. I don't see my meeting here. That's not good. All right. Jackie Whitsitt.
Yes, here.
Tenenbaum.
Here.
Bernie Brower.
Here.
Katie Schwer.
Here.
Auden Schendler.
Here.
Jennifer Riffle.
Here, present.
Mark Kittle.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Jennifer, you're really good at this. Do you want to read our intro? Our little happy notes?
Sure, most definitely. It will be my
No, I asked the other
honor
person.
and pleasure. Well, I don't have an agenda.
Oh, you don't?
Basalt is an inclusive, sustainable mountain community that boasts both historic charm and progressive vision. It is an engaging place to live, work, and play while offering an abundance of creative, professional, educational, and recreational outlets.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, this is our very important night where we award Students of the Month. And we're pleased to acknowledge our students from the Basalt Public Schools. The awards are always based on the 6 pillars of character. And this pillar of character is citizenship. Citizenship is defined as, do you do your share to make your school and community better? You cooperate, you stay informed and vote when necessary, be a good neighbor, obey laws and follow rules, respect authority, and protect the environment. So rather than me just reading the names here on my piece of paper, I'm going to ask Auden if he would start with his Student of the Month.
I will. Ciamara.
Oh, so cute.
That's awesome.
Am I pronouncing your name right? Yeah. Ciamara. Okay. I'm going to read you good stuff here. Ciamara always does the right thing, even if she's surrounded by those who are not doing the right thing, like she is now. This is the biggest help for making our classrooms run smoothly. She's very respectful to adults and peers. She makes sure that her table mates have help if needed. Miss Wadoff's class has a phonics activity every week. Ciamara is usually finished first and will use her free time to help classmates. One month in Mrs. Talbot's class, she had the job of organizing the library. This entails finding the messiest bucket, flipping through all the books to face them the right way, and make sure that the books are in the correct bucket. Students often do this half-heartedly, but Ciamara faithfully came to me every day after doing her job and showed me the bucket. It was always done correctly. Wow. I can trust her always for that. And for that, she absolutely deserves the award for citizenship. That was written by Mrs. Talbot and Mrs. Wadoff. Congratulations, you get this.
Okay. Bernie, do you want to go? Good job.
Cash Harkloo. Hi, Cash. Cash Harkloo is a Citizen of the Month from 2nd grade Basalt Elementary School. He always does 100% to make BES and his classroom better. Cash is very cooperative and a good neighbor when teaming or group time. He always obeys laws and follows rules and assists friends needing guidance. Cash is a most respectful citizen, and we love having him in our class. I honor Cash with this citizen nomination and am proud to have him as our leader. Mrs. Ray Christian.
Cash?
Oh, here, your certificate.
All right.
You get
Good
it.
job. Should we start at your end, Jennifer?
Okay.
Do you have somebody?
I do. I have the honor of Jake Roos. Is Jake here?
Oh. Oh.
I can take it to him though. It's my neighbor.
We'll try to get him in next time, if that's possible. Okay.
Mark's giving you his.
Is Stephanie Anglin here? Stephanie?
No.
0 for 2.
Uh-huh. Well, there you go. We both
I owe
win.
you one anyway.
I Yeah.
You try.
I did.
Okay, let's have Katie go.
Caitlin Peterson.
Yay!
Caitlin is an outstanding role model for her classmates. She is very hardworking, respectful, and kind. She participates with thoughtful things to say and works very hard at everything she does. Caitlin's work ethic, coupled with her natural sense of citizenship, display characteristics of a true Basalt Longhorn. She's a true joy to know.
Wow.
So I get the
Counselor
honor
Tenenbaum.
of doing my own son, Jared Tenenbaum. I know. So Jared, I was going to say something to embarrass you, but I promised your poppy I wouldn't do that. So I'm really proud that you got this award. I've been on council almost 8 years, and you've never been up here, but now you are. And I just read what your teacher wrote, and it's pretty impressive. Citizenship should be Jared Tenenbaum's middle name. What a respectful young man he is, not only towards teachers and students, but Jared is also conscientious about school itself and the environment. He is always looking for ways to improve the way tasks are accomplished around the school so as not to waste materials. Jared loves helping around the classroom and enjoys being the kind of kid who people want to be around, kids and adults alike. What a joy it is to teach Jared. And so I get ahead.
Nice job. Oh, jeez. Gary didn't ball, but I did.
He was close. You know what? Internally, I am crying.
Crying for happy. All right, well, that was really fun. Okay, just so the kids know, if you go out in the hallway, there's going to be a photo done for all of you. And also, you will get a swimming pool pass in the summer.
You'll be on the list.
You'll be on a list. Yes, I will. Oh, yeah, you know what? Before I cut you loose, I want to just do this one quick little thank you, a couple of quick little thank yous. We always want to thank Grassroots TV for being here and for broadcasting our meeting live. People can watch tonight's meeting live or view previous council meetings or this council meeting online at grassrootstv.org. Our videographer this evening is Kyle Pieti. Is that right? Whoa, thank you, Kyle. Tomorrow morning is the mayor's coffee that we have every Wednesday after the Tuesday when we have a meeting. So I will be at Starbucks at 8 o'clock tomorrow. And if anybody wants to come and chat or has issues or questions, I will even take that and I'll buy you coffee, 8 o'clock. Black, I'll buy you the black coffee. Okay, so this evening we are happy to acknowledge the 74 U.S. Paralympians attending this year's Winter Games. Oh, I hate that word.
Pyeongchang.
Thank you, Pyeongchang. Competing in alpine skiing, Nordic skiing, biathlon, and cross country, snowboarding, sled hockey, and wheelchair curling. We are especially honored to recognize our Aspen-based Paralympian team members for skiing, Melanie Schwartz, Kevin Burton, Andrew Kirka, Jamie Stanton, Stephen Lawler, Tyler Walker, Lori Stevens, Thomas Walsh, and Josh Elliott, and for snowboarding, Keith Gable. To date, the Aspen-based team has won, thank you for all this work, Pam, Lori Stevens, bronze medal for downhill skiing, Andrew Kirka, gold medal for downhill skiing, Andrew Kirka, silver medal for Super G, giant slalom, Keith Gable, silver for the snowboard cross, and more to come as the Paralympics closing ceremonies are scheduled for Sunday, March 18th, and yay to them. So, you don't have to stay here anymore. You can go out in the hallway, get your picture taken, go have dinner. You bet. Thank you so much. Here. I can't stand it. I really can't stand it. I hope I just don't fall all night.
You like my notes? Read newspaper that my children drew on my little book.
Is there any?
Hello, how are you? Okay, our next agenda item is the consent agenda, but before I go there, I just wanted to ask everybody at the table, staff and council as well, if you could please ask for the floor when you want to speak. I tend to get my body focused this way for some unknown reason, and so it's just better if people will just please ask for the floor. So the consent agenda is the minutes. And our second item is continue to March 27th, the public hearing and first reading of an ordinance amending the town sustainability building regulations. So it's continued. So if there's anybody that wants to pull something off here, please do. Otherwise, if I could get a motion.
Mayor, I move that the town council approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. So at this point in time, we would like to ask if there's anybody in the public who has either positive, we would love to have positive comments and gratitudes about Basalt, because there are lots of things to be grateful for, or any other item that you want to talk about that is not on the agenda. We ask that you please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Anybody? Okay. The next one is mayor and council reports and comments. And anybody? Bernie?
Yeah, I just want to mention that I attended a vaping education talk at the high school earlier this week, and the school resource officer provided a very good summary of what has become a concern. All the science isn't in yet, but it is a concern that vaping is a gateway to particularly tobacco, nicotine use, smoking, marijuana use in young people. And we had a very thorough briefing by the school resource officer. It was common sense, it was useful, and I appreciated being able to attend it.
Thanks, Bernie. Anybody else? Jennifer?
I will mention that Auden and I attended the Healthy Rivers Pitkin County stakeholder meeting on the Basalt Whitewater Park. And again, as I mentioned last meeting, it's pretty stunning what what Pitkin County is putting forth as far as options. And I'm very, very stoked to continue the partnership.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, how about manager's report from Ryan Mahoney?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have a couple different items. So tomorrow evening, several staff are going to be attending the Sopers Meadows HOA meeting. That's their annual meeting, and they invited us, and we'll give them an update on the East Valley Road project mainly, and then talk a little bit about mosquitoes, but just be there in attendance. And Chief Knott, myself, and possibly Susan and Matt Wagner from Public Works will attend. Let's see, I was going to mention the Whitewater meeting that was done. I put in my report last Friday about a training that I've scheduled, doing so in conjunction with Carbondale, and that would be in May, and we have 2 dates to choose from, May 14th or 16th. So it's an off week. That's a Monday or a Wednesday, and the idea there, we'll have some new council members, and a good refresher for the rest of us. But it's a couple hours probably of training, so that's really the reason to not schedule it on a regular meeting date. And so just wanted to get a quick preference if a Monday or a Wednesday work better for you all.
Could we do that outside of here so we don't have to whip out our calendars? Because I don't know.
You can. I just need response because I've sent it out. I just need to nail her down like ASAP. Yeah.
By noon tomorrow?
By noon tomorrow? That's awesome.
Could everybody please respond to Ryan by noon tomorrow, and could you just whip it out there one more time?
Yep.
Okay, and if I could just encourage people, I think maybe some municipalities or counties have more formal training when people are elected, but we don't really have that too much. So despite the fact that many of us have been on here a really long time or a short time, or will just be stepping in the door, it's a really good thing to do, because I think especially the more seasoned of the elected officials have questions that really are helpful to ask in these training sessions. So that's my way of saying, please, 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 can we try to have some participation if possible? I know people work and everything, so. Anything else?
Great, thank you. Yeah, a couple things. Mentioned also that once Councilman Kittle leaves his tenure here with the town council, there will be a vacancy on the RWAPA board. So I thought, per his suggestion, that we would wait until the new council seated and then try to find a volunteer for that. But that's the Root Eye Water, and they, among other things, talk about and manage the mussel issue. And I'm sure there's other water quality or quantity.
All the water issues,
Yeah.
as far as diversion and stuff.
Does this need to be an elected official?
I don't know. I think it's
Always have.
typically
Okay,
a council
all right.
member. Yeah.
I was gonna just ask for it
Are we-
to keep doing it. Never mind.
Uh-uh.
Okay. No thanks.
It's really an important one.
It is.
Because the other elected officials, since Basalt is really a kind of a key player,
Sure.
that, you know, and it's a good thing for us to do.
Okay, well, let's do that after.
Yep, we'll do that.
Yeah.
So next meeting is the 27th. I will not be at that meeting. So just another reminder for you guys. If need be, I could be available by phone. I'm going to try to avoid that if possible, but I'll throw that out there.
Just say
depending
you're
on
not
what we
gonna be
have.
available by phone.
Maybe I'll have a bad connection. And then just a couple more real quick things. Wanted to thank Judy, and embarrass her a little bit, but we just did the final closeout for the underpass. All I's are dotted and T's crossed, so that was an immense project.
Yay!
And it is finished. So thanks, Judy, for that. And then a quick thank you to Chris Matera and Eric Brodell. Chris is our chamber director, and then Eric has been helping us with our tobacco ordinance. And they went around to all of our retailers and explained to them what the just sort of basic education on why we're doing this. And so we got some good feedback through them. And lastly, an email went out. The library is looking for one volunteer from this board to help out with interviews for the library board. And so that will be, there's 4 different training dates. I will send those out along with my reminder about our training in May. So we just need one person, and I think it's just a couple hours of your time.
Right.
That's it. Sorry, I was a little long-winded today.
Thank you, Ryan. Our next item is Eagle County Mid-Valley Area Community Plan. Is P&Z coming here?
Well, no, Ryan Slack is our only P&Z member in attendance. Ryan, I won't put you on the spot, but if you could kind of come up here and sit at the table.
Thanks for coming, Ryan.
How are you
And,
not putting him on the spot by doing that?
No, I'm not going to ask him to do a presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. Bill Marin was going to be be in attendance to the meeting, but had to take one of his kids to Glenwood and didn't think he would be back in time. So it's possible he's going to join us. And James and I are going to kind of do this as a little bit of a tag team. But basically, this is on the council agenda because the council asked for it to be on this agenda for the purpose of the council having a discussion. So I'm only going to kind of say a few remarks to give an opportunity really for the council to discuss this. Thought what I'd do is just kind of give us kind of a status of where we're at. Eagle County currently has a moratorium on land use applications. They have asked the Roaring Fork Valley Regional Planning Commission to evaluate the Mid-Valley Area Community Plan and determine if any amendments are necessary. And then Eagle County has a schedule, which I put on the bottom of your agenda packet. And basically, the Roaring Fork Valley Regional Planning Commission is about halfway through the process. They have the remaining hearings this Thursday, which is probably one of the most important ones. the Roaring Fork Valley Regional Planning Commission is going to be talking about the Highway 82 corridor area, and then on April 5th they're going to be talking about the Frying Pan and Emma areas, and then they have it scheduled for April 19th that the Roaring Fork Valley Regional Planning Commission would adopt any amendments to the plan if they decided to do so. You know, to kind of prepare ourselves, we've been attending the meetings as staff. We've been noticing the meetings so that the P&Z members and the town council members can come, and we'll continue to do that. Most importantly, our P&Z, the Basalt P&Z, has weighed in on the Mid-Valley Area Community Plan, and in January submitted a letter to the Roaring Fork Regional Planning Commission highlighting some policies that were very important that we thought needed some attention, highlighting the need maybe to do a joint build-out analysis, but most importantly, what the P&Z was asking for was an opportunity to jointly sit down and meet with the Roaring Fork Valley Regional Planning Commission and share their thoughts about the Mid-Valley Plan. And the county honored that. We had that meeting March 1st, and this is the first time in a very, very long time that the two bodies have met together. We did it when we were doing the 99 plan, and I think we did it when we did the 2007 plan, but it's been a really long time before the two groups could really kind of sit down. And overall, I think the meeting was really kind of successful in doing what it wanted to do. Bill Marin gave a presentation and highlighted some of the key policies, and almost all of the P&Z members, all the P&Z members that were actually in town and in the country came to the meeting. And the Regional Planning Commission came back and asked the Basalt P&Z to make specific recommendations and policies that we would like changed. So the P&Z's done that. That draft letter was in your packet. Our intention is to go ahead and forward that letter tomorrow, but we just kind of wanted to have an opportunity for you guys to at least have had it in your packet before we sent that out. And I'm not going to go over point by point, but I just want to kind of highlight a couple things that are in there. One, there's a reference to including child care as an important community service that Eagle County should look at, and this is kind of the first step in them really kind of addressing it in their land use regulations. Two, we have references that Eagle County should only allow urban level development where our plan has it within the urban growth boundary or has a future land use designation on it. Another thing that I think was important with our recommendations is that the P&Z was recommending that 2 of the future land use designations get a change in their title and more definition of what we were looking for. And so the P&Z was suggesting that the urban suburban residential category be changed to village residential, and that the mixed use category be changed to village mixed use with some parameters on allowed density. And this is really more of an indication that that these uses are viewed as different than Willits Town Center, and they're not really urban, suburban, that they're more indicative of the existing character that you see in the neighborhoods that the land use should be placed on, like Soper's Village or Blue Lake, or the village mixed use in the Elgibel area. Another thing that the P&Z meeting letter referenced was kind of the desire to do maybe a joint plan in the future, and kind of repeating that desire to have a build-out analysis. James, do you think there's anything else maybe I should highlight?
No, I think you did a pretty good job of going over basically all the topics.
So that letter's, ready to be sent, and it's a lot of detail, because the Roaring Fork Regional Planning Commission asked us for this specific language. And Bill Marin, I talked to him today, he's the chair of the P&Z, and he wasn't able to come, but, he wanted me to kind of convey that a little bit, that our P&Z was looking at this as a recognition that this was the Roaring Fork Valley regional plan. It was their plan, and that these are recommendations that our P&Z's making to their plan, and we weren't trying to, the P&Z wasn't trying to, they were trying to have, what?
We weren't trying to impose on them, we were trying to make suggestions.
Yes, we were trying to start a dialogue, start a cooperative relationship with the two boards, and it was kind of a first step in doing that. So the P&Z was trying to give language that they thought that the Regional Planning Commission could seriously consider. Anything else you want to think I should clarify on that, Ryan?
Very good.
So really, this is on, again, this was, one other quick thing. Our Parks, Open Space, and Trails Committee has, talked about writing a letter. They've discussed it at 2 meetings, and they have a draft that they're going to consider tomorrow. And those are more specifics. The plan currently is kind of general in terms of its reference to trail connections, and this letter is more specific in terms of trail connections that the post committee would like to see, and a recognition of the importance of Crown Mountain and intergovernmental coordination as we're working together. And so now that's all really I wanted to say, because I want to make sure this really, again, was an opportunity for the council was the ones that wanted to have this on the agenda, so it's really Mayor.
I'll go first. I think it's appropriate and professional that our planning commission, which is advisory, is sort of careful and political with regard to what they suggest to the county advisory group. But I feel like this board should be taking a stronger stand on some of this, because even though it's recommending in the planning commission that they limit basically urban growth to Basalt's master plan areas, it doesn't really end up saying that, because there's several places where urban levels of growth would still be considered, and where mixed use commercial would still be considered, and densities that are, to me, outside of the county realm are can still be considered. And Ryan and I have spent a lot of time on this, and I've been to every single meeting and written a follow-up letter after every single meeting, basically saying that if we want to stop sprawl from going out into the county, then we need to take off a couple of specific allowed land use designations. One of them is, if I can read my tiny little phone writing here, urban suburban residential, it should be nixed completely, it shouldn't be on there. Large lot residential is an unincorporated type of designation. Mixed use, the way it's written in here is basically a Willits, could be interpreted as a Willits type density in commercial and residential. And I think that was pretty much the ones that I felt in listening to the conversation really should not be on there if in fact we want to have urban uses come to the town. So I don't know what's going to happen with the tree farm project, but if the citizens prevail in that lawsuit, they could very well be looking at reviewing that again, and if they have basically the same master plan to toss that back on, guess what?
It's gonna pass again.
So Ryan knows pretty much where I'm coming from, and has spoken at the meetings similarly. But I just, if we can't say this as a council, I'll keep saying it by myself. But I think we really need to get serious. I mean, some people on the County Planning Commission think there's nothing else to ruin. I beg to differ on that. Given the wrong elected board and things really changing, everything on Missouri Heights could be upzoned. Everything in this whole Mid-Valley area could be upzoned, including as far away from Highway 82 as you want to get. Right now, that doesn't seem to be a real danger, but the master plan is underpinning the ability to still upzone and have high densities and urban growth.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I think in a discussion that you and I had, as far as turning over a letter, if that's the product of this conversation to the Regional Planning Commission, that maybe, sort of what you're talking about are broader topics, and a couple of them that you didn't mention that we've talked about was possibly doing a survey.
Yes.
And sort of just pausing and really taking stock of what the community and the general community that is affected by that plan wants as far as land use. Certainly, I've heard you talk about in unincorporated, there should not be urban levels of development, period. It should be characteristically rural, that being a point to be made. Perhaps floating this idea of, once again, the joint planning effort, whereby we would have one master plan and one code that gets administered for a defined area. That defined area likely being the 3-mile planning area. And then talking about, and you touched on this already, but with regard to their land use designations, in fact, omitting some that would be characteristically urban, suburban. Yeah. And so I think we've captured those. Am I right in thinking that was sort of the approach that you were thinking to writing a letter? Well, that's
where I've been going all along. I mean, I have not sent my last letter that addresses potential survey, but I think they're desperately in need of a survey. The planning staff that they have don't seem completely willing to support the planning commissioners and are asking them to kind of do their own rewrite, or asking our planning commissioners to send replacement language for what their language is, and some other things that normally wouldn't go on here, for sure. So I think in order for them to actually find out, they are going to have to cast a broader net, for sure. And I don't know that they're willing to do that, but I feel like we should say it. And then, as Ryan said, the folks that we talked to in Estes Park and Larimer County, who have the joint master planning and the joint code, are willing to come here for free and address that group. The other thing I asked in my last letter that hasn't gone there yet, so I guess I'll just reveal the surprise, is that it doesn't seem likely that they can get this done to the level of thoroughness that they maybe could if they really do cut it off in 2 more meetings or whatever it is. They only meet once a month. They're lacking staff support, and I would like to see them, whether they stay in the moratorium or don't stay in the moratorium. I wish they would continue their master plan update and get a little deeper into it. And I will continue to say they need outside professional help to support their effort, because it appears to be lacking from everything that's being said in the public meetings. So I guess, since I'm the one that goes to all these, and I feel like, maybe you guys are with me or not with me, I can't tell, but maybe Ryan and I could forge a letter that's, kind of captures everything, that some of the things from the Planning Commission, but some of the more get to the damn point stuff too, and then send it back around to everybody. I mean, there is not that much of a rush for us to approve a letter from this council, and then you all would have time too to see it and circle back with Ryan on thoughts that you might have. Yeah.
Well, first off, I do appreciate our planning and zoning.
Absolutely.
Taking the time to really review this and actually going to the meetings, because the reality is, for me, it's impossible to figure out more time in my life to deal with this right now. I feel the process is overwhelming to somebody even who is dealing with government all the time. I feel they have created a process that is completely overwhelming for the normal citizen to participate in. So I'd really would love them to do, why not just do a survey of your community to really get what you feel from the Eagle County residents of this area, because that would help you, inform you of how you want to change it. Because, you know, you guys have taken a lot of time, and I like a lot of this recommended changes, but I don't really understand Eagle County's ability. What are they trying to change? It looks like they're trying to lower some density. It looks like they're trying to provide broader definitions to things and bring urban level development down, but there's still a lot of typologies in their master plan, and I really believe that Eagle County should simplify their master plan a little bit more and really look to condensing the urban level growth to the town's urban growth boundary and working with the town to develop that, to basically stop sprawl. And I haven't seen anything about traffic in any of this stuff. And I don't know if they are dealing, because I guarantee you put a survey out, traffic is going to be one of the largest things that people are going to complain about in this Mid-Valley area. So where is that, and why isn't it all that stuff being done before this happens? Because I feel, you know, our planning and zoning did a great job. They did great recommendations. Yes, I'd like them to be stronger, and I understand, you know, from a planning and zoning perspective, how strong can you be, because it's not your plan, it's Eagle County's plan. And so I'm hoping that maybe if we send a letter that doesn't tell them what to do, but gives them these suggestions on how to get more community support. How do we come up with a 3-mile planning document? How do we do that together and get the community behind it? Because I think if you do that survey and it shows you what the community wants, you know, that would be more support to, you know, kind of either extend the moratorium or do what they're doing.
Yeah, well, here's an example of sort of how these meetings go. So a couple of meetings ago, the Eagle County engineer stood up and more or less parroted what information he had gotten from CDOT regarding capacity on Highway 82. And correct me if I'm wrong, but he said that the capacity on 82 is only 30 to 35% used currently, and there's 70% left. So I thought to myself, that isn't really how it's working at rush hour and at the intersections. So I went and talked to the engineer after the meeting, and the way he said that CDOT explains that is the way that they continue to gain capacity on 82 is by shutting off traffic access from the side roads. So I think you know what I'm saying. So in order to maintain traffic flow on 82, as traffic grows, there will be longer and longer wait times to gain access to 82 so that they can get 70% more traffic on there by stopping the traffic getting on. And barring clover leaves and grade separated intersections, you know, we're basically not going to get on that highway at rush hour at all, and almost need to build frontage roads all up and down the Mid-Valley in order to move around. So anyway, that's not what is being said in the 5-minute presentation was. We still have 70% capacity on 82. So, Jennifer.
Having attended some of the meetings, it's unclear to me where not so much where the progress is, but is the commission actually hearing? And there's no feedback loop. It seems like there's a lot of talk, and there haven't been documents or edits provided to the public. And that's something that I'd really like to see. From the verbal standpoint, it was terribly, terribly disturbing to hear the chair suggest that there's nothing left that the whole process is moot, and that there's nothing left that this is going to affect. So why even bother with the process? it was really challenging to stay in my chair and not jump up and scream. So Jackie, I am very supportive of what your points are, and that's, I am hearing the same things when I attend the meetings, and those are my same thoughts.
And so far, and I haven't seen all the future agendas, just the main headings of the future agendas, but there has been no time scheduled for the Planning Commission to deliberate. They hear some staff information, and then they move on to the next meeting. So, I mean, as far as I can tell, the only feedback that the Planning Commission is getting is from me, which, that's not good enough. It's really not good enough. So, even if it's us, that's more than just me. So anyway, yeah.
And I'm super supportive of still attempting the joint master planning. Not still attempting, like, let's take steps to do that, and I don't know how we can initiate, but taking
honestly,
action.
if you're very specific about a suggestion, they're pretty open. Like I kept saying, starting the meetings at 4 o'clock doesn't allow for people with jobs to be able to weigh in at all. And so they changed the start to 5:30, and that was painful for them because they've never done that. But they did it because, you know, several of us said, I mean, I am retired. I can be there anytime, but real people, not gonna happen. Not gonna happen, Fernie.
So when are you going to produce this arrow letter which gets to the point?
Well, it's kind of, I think we already have the gist of it from our conversations and letters, you know, the Planning Commission's letter and my letters. And so I don't think it would be very hard to cobble it together and send it out for you guys' review. Auden?
Yeah, I think we need to send a letter as Council United. I think we mostly agree on the general vision. You know, Gary, you're right. It's too complicated and too time-consuming for us to individually augur in. But I think that the letter should have a paragraph intro that gets at the most fundamental point, which is our biggest problem with Eagle County and the plan as it exists now is that we want the density to be in our core and we don't want to sprawl. And Eagle County, by approving urban density outside the town of Basalt urban growth boundary, violates that. We have to fix that. That's fundamentally what you're saying. We have to maybe even express a willingness to put that density in our core, but if we can just make that obvious, super clear statement and ask if that plan can be modified to accommodate that as best as they can, at least we're on record with that. And it sets the stage for joint planning where we get further that way. Gary, you know better than me, but Pickens County's done a decent job of achieving that. So there's a model for what we're describing. And, you know, there's this conflict between the planning office in Eagle County that says, no, we think this is totally appropriate. It's smart growth. I've had these guys say this to me, and I'll say, no, it's sprawl. That's a really fundamental disagreement. So, and Ryan, because we don't have time to be there, we really appreciate your P&Z looking at it and weighing in, and staff too. It's a really important thing, and it just is layers and layers of time that we don't have.
And I really appreciate staff. I mean, Susan and or James and or plus Ryan have been there all the time. So you see how sketchy this is going, just like jumping along the tops of the wave. You go, oh my God, this isn't going to change. So, you know, all we can do is suggest, but I think if the more clear we are in our suggestion, the less beating around the bush we are, the more likely they are to hear us. So anyway, let's work on it.
Let's just get that letter drafted and you can pass it around, and
yep,
we can you know, get it out to them as quick as possible. Get it out to the commissioners too, copy them, because I look at it going, they need to provide some leadership.
Yeah,
and when we had our joint meeting with them to get this going, it seemed like they were going to lead, because, you know, Joe Ryan quoting, I'm tired of listening to this, so we got to change it. And Autumn's right. Pickens County has, you know, basically said, you're going to do 1 per 10 acre, and if you want more, go in the urban growth boundary, and guess what? Stotts Mills did, and everything else did. And so, you know, you kind of push that level of development into the town by downzoning, so you don't have the sprawl. And I do worry about it, because Missouri Heights, if you would continue that type of development of a lot of subdivisions up there, that area of Missouri Heights, we just had this great fire presentation. That's going to be, you know, a ground zero for a big fat fire one day, and then all our resources are going to protect all these homes that got built, and if they don't have the right codes and everything else.
They don't have any
have
water
water.
to put a
So,
fire out.
Anyway.
So,
and no more.
anyway, okay, we'll do that. We will do that, see what you think, give us feedback on it, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk about
Thank
this.
you, Ryan, for coming.
It's so fun. Thanks,
I'm so grateful for you.
Yeah, you too, Jackie. Thank you for attending.
And John, thank you for attending.
Okay, so our next item is approval of Roaring Fork Conservancy Agreement regarding construction of Old Pond Park improvements. Susan, Phil?
And James, could you see it? They should be sitting out waiting, because we talked earlier today and said that we might move along and to be here. But, yeah, they're coming in. So just a second, we have, this is a motion to authorize the town manager to execute agreement for the construction of Old Pond improvements with the Roaring Fork Conservancy. And
You can sit up
Rob,
here, too.
let you sit up here.
What if you want to say something?
Right, there's that.
And I think that everybody knows Rick LaFaro, the executive director of the Roaring Fork Conservancy, and Rob Morey, who's the owner's rep for the Roaring Fork Conservancy.
Welcome.
And
Thank you.
so just real briefly, the reason that we're in front of you today was set in motion a long time ago, where the town of Basalt took a series of actions to try to get the Roaring Fork Conservancy's River Center built. And the great news is that, as you can see, it's well underway, and we're looking for a CO and a groundbreaking opening in August, followed by a big community party. We are here today to talk about this specific agreement, and then also mid-April, we will be starting the construction of the Two Rivers Road improvements. So by August, when you come into town on Two Rivers Road, you know, hopefully, we'll have a beautiful road, and we'll finish Old Pond Park, and we'll have the River Center there. So the reason we're here today is that we approved a resolution in June of 2017 that kind of outlined the funding responsibilities for building Old Pond Park and Two Rivers Road. They were broken out separately in that resolution, and the resolution said that the town of Basalt would kind of put in motion this whole kind of process that we're using here, but said that when we had a contract for building the Old Pond Park improvements, we'd bring it back to the town council for approval. So that's really why we're here. There's an agreement that's attached that's a letter agreement between the town manager and the executive director of the Roaring Fork Conservancy, and basically it's providing that the Roaring Fork Conservancy will enter into a change order with Carew, who's their general contractor, for about $196,000, and the Roaring Fork Conservancy will construct the park improvements, and then the rest of the agreement, you know, deals with the payment schedule and how everything is outlined. Just a couple things that I wanted to mention. We might make the motion that we're asking for the town council. We'd like to have the authority, this was recommended by Tom Smith, just to make any technical changes that we need to do before it's executed. The other thing I just wanted to kind of point out is that we included the Old Pond Park improvements in our 5-year capital improvement plan. I kind of summarized that in the backup. At the next council meeting, you'll see in accounts payable, the contribution of I think it's like $156,000 that we'll be making towards the Two Rivers Road improvements. And without going into a lot of the details, I'm really here to answer any questions before we do that, but maybe Rick, you'd like to make any comments?
Just excited to be looking at a finish date here in 4 to 5 months with the grand opening, and I think it's going to be a great day for this organization, but also for the town of Basalt as we look toward a grand opening weekend, particularly with the community. And just as a little plug, we'll be conducting a raffle, and we're going to be selling raffle tickets, and our grand prize is going to be a beautiful Boulder Boatworks drift boat. So Tom Smith or other anglers in the crowd or community.
What was that again?
It's a Boulder Boatworks drift boat. So it's
Gotcha.
It's the Cadillac of drift boats. So that'll be a fun thing. But we're very, very excited. The facility's looking great. If anybody wants to do a walkthrough at any time, we'd be happy to take you through there. Right on track, right on target, right on budget, and Rob Ancor has done an excellent job of really keeping it moving. So thanks for your support.
Okay, questions, anybody? Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering, in the long term, so who owns the land? Does the Roaring Fork Conservancy so Old Pond Park, the town of Basalt owns, and as well, the land that the Roaring Fork Conservancy building sits on, the town of Basalt owns. So what is the agreement for maintenance of the landscaping?
The thought is that the Old Pond Park improvements will all be maintained by the town of Basalt. So what you're seeing on the little map there, that'll all be maintained by the town of Basalt. The Roaring Fork Conservancy is responsible for maintaining kind of the area within their lease area, and then kind of the area, it's more or less the area just around their foundation and the sidewalk going out to the Two Rivers Road.
So what is the agreement with Rocky Mountain Institute, the neighbors next door, specifically the stone amphitheater that has water running through it? Who owns that land, and whose maintenance responsibility is that?
That stone area actually is the town of Basalt's maintenance responsibility. And just as an aside, we knew last year that it wasn't very well maintained, and Rocky Mountain Custom Landscaping, who's actually the landscaper, when they were out there doing the work on the children's play area, they kind of helped us clean that up. But it's one of our desired improvements is to keep that area back behind RMI maintained a little bit better. And in the water area, in that same thing. We had quite a bit of discussion about it in the fall of last year. And we're hoping that with the Roaring Fork Conservancy there, they'll be
Can we have some partnership with granted, I understand that Rocky Mountain Institute, they own their land, they own their building, but can we have some maintenance collaboration with the partners there?
It's something that we could, talk more about, and
because it's such an amazing asset. I really love it. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it was last year, it was very difficult to use it. It was covered in thistles. You couldn't sit on the stones because there was so much greenery growing there, and it was noxious. So I just want to, I see this landscape plan, and I'm so excited about it, and it looks amazing. And I just want to ensure that what we're committing to, we're putting the finances to make this, but are we going to maintain it? It's like buying the toy for the kid. Are you going to play with it? Are you going to take care of it? And I want to ask the town ourselves, are we committed to doing that? And do we have the staffing and the funding to be able to maintain it? I hope so. Okay. Because if we don't, I don't want to vote for it.
Theoretically, I mean, if you're asking that, if it's not a rhetorical question, we have staff to maintain all of our parks, and there's a certain level of service that we can provide, and is that our one focus, to be able to maintain that one at the highest level? No, but if it's something that we can add to, sort of a master list of making sure we're going and checking and putting some more eyeballs on it, then I think the answer is yes.
Great, I'm on board for that.
Councilor Tenenbaum.
I just wanted to be, I want these agreements to be clear about maintenance, who's responsible for what, because we don't want to get into anything. Like the Conservancy is responsible for their lease area, boom, that's done. And if the town's responsible for the other areas, the town just takes care of it. And, it's just one thing that Ryan will come back on as we go future, is how much does this really take to maintain all our parks and everything else, and what kind of staffing do we need to keep our parks in the type of shape that this community expects. So, I'm expecting to see, as the years go on, and Boyd and everyone coming in and going, this is what it really takes to maintain these parks, because we have been approving a ton of these.
Yes.
And building a ton of these, and we haven't really hired more staff to maintain any of these. So something's got to change on that.
Anybody else? My only thing is, I'm just curious. I totally remember that we budgeted this and approved going forward. I guess my question is, how was this procured? Was it procured by the town? Was it procured by the Conservancy? How were these contractors selected, and by who?
Sure. So Koru actually did the procurement, but they went out and
used ours.
And solicited bids, and then we had DHM that helped to go through and vet the bids, and we ended up choosing it. Ended up being the lowest bidder, but also a contractor that is a trusted contractor. So we're on the up and up as far as our procurement goes.
Just want to make sure, because I know there's some questions about how it doesn't work that well sometimes, and other times it does. And did we procure DHM, or was that just, how was that?
DHM has gone through a procurement process initially when we started planning on the park over there. So they were the ones that did some of those original plans and have been
So it's just part of that procurement from the big park?
Yes. Am I correct in saying that? Yep.
We're just continuing, because it makes most sense for them, because they were involved with the plan and construction documents.
Yes, ma'am.
But did they actually go through the procurement policy? Did we?
It predated the.
Right, so they're kind of grandfathered in, and it's something that I'd like to be aware of, is we should open our construction administration and procure that contractor, because it has just been this grandfathered, and we need to be aware of that.
And if we have others like that too, I agree with Jennifer. We just need to bring it all into the sunshine. So,
sure.
So anything else? Yeah.
One more. I just wanted to look at the amounts of looking at the administration and project management of this. That we have $7,200 of construction administration for DHM. Does that include this procurement policy, or that's for work going further?
That is a continuation of the work that they've done thus far for us, and then they essentially act as the town's representative for looking at, as plant material comes in, the different boulders that'll come in. So there's sort of a quality control, and it's pretty normal for when you have a contractor that's doing the work that a town could, because this contractor isn't specifically our contractor, that we would have a representative to just look out for our interests as well. So.
Okay, so are the construction management and project management, Koru, the $17,000, is that all within a reasonable percentage of the total cost?
We think so. Staff, yes, we looked at that, and it's unacceptable. And it's important to note too that some of these costs are not exact; they're more not to exceed. And so they will possibly be less than what you're seeing here, but it was an estimation of hours for, in advance for what they think the work could be.
Okay, beautiful.
So a conservative estimate.
Anything else, or is there a forward? Yes.
I was just gonna say, the motion should, just a recognition that you're doing the amended agreement that we emailed out and it's going to.
Mayor, I move that town council authorize the town manager to execute the amended agreement for the construction of Old Pond Park improvements.
Second.
Further discussion?
One quick clarification is just Susan mentioned that if there's some minor technical tweaks that we'd be able to do that prior to execution. So it wouldn't be substantive tweaks.
Okay, with minor tweaks of unknown derivation.
And is the second okay with that?
Yes.
Vague representation? Okay. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good work.
Thank you, everybody.
I
Appreciate
know
your
it's
time.
got to be tiring
It's exciting.
and exciting.
Very exciting.
You can only go so far on adrenaline. Then you got to rest.
Thanks.
Okay. First reading of Ordinance 5, Series of 2018, an ordinance of the town amending Chapter 6 of the Municipal Code of the Town, Business Licenses and Regulations to add a new Article 6 entitled Licensing of Tobacco Retails. Dr. Grauer and Dr. Mahoney.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. And I might ask Chief Knott to just come up. Sorry to put you on the spot there, Greg. But just in case there's any questions about the enforcement side of it, because we're going to have a quick discussion about that. But a few of the highlights from this ordinance, as you all know, we have a question on the ballot asking to tax our tobacco retailers. And this is essentially part and parcel to that. And what this would do would have the town actually license our tobacco retailers, as well as increase the sales age from 18 to 21. Our license would be locally administered. It's likely that it would be the town clerk in charge of that, similar to liquor licensing that we have in place today. The licenses would be good for a year. And there is a restriction in the ordinance that no retailers can sell tobacco within 500 feet of schools, but that would exempt existing businesses. So no new businesses or new retailers would be able to locate. And a couple of the prohibitions that were in there was that no self-service displays would be permitted. So nobody can go and grab their own. It has to be a clerk that would grab the tobacco and then meet the customer face to face with a requirement to card. But basically we have it in there, and I'll talk about that in a moment, that if they looked under 30, that we would card. There's a recommendation by Tom to take that part out, and I'll let him explain that part real quick.
So there's a rule of law in when having to do with the language of regulations and putting people on notice of what constitutes a violation. It's a constitutional requirement, and when a regulation is deemed to be too vague, it gets thrown out and you can't enforce it. So my concern with this standard, and I'll be candid, it is used in some places. My concern with this is that it would be a defense for someone who violates the provision to say, well, this person looked under 30 or over 30 to me, who's to say? And I would be concerned that the court might say, yes, it's a too vague a standard and throw it out. So I've suggested incorporating instead what the state statute has, which is that you can't sell to anyone under the age of 21, and it's an affirmative defense that you carded the person and they showed ID. So that showed that they were the required age. So that way, you've got an objective standard. Now, you know, if someone who is 75 years old goes in and they decide not to card that person, they don't have to card that person. So, you know, but if someone goes in and they're, you know, 4'8" and won't need to shave for about another 10 years, they're kind of on notice that they better check the ID, and if they don't, then they're in violation. And so I think it's a better standard, and as I say, it's the one that the state uses. That's my recommendation. But I can't say that the, you know, the other one is used. In fact, we were on the phone today with the representatives from the city of Fountain, you know, in the Colorado Springs area, and they use this standard, but I'm nervous about it myself.
Brian, where is that in?
If you go to section 6, 154B,
Yeah, it's
on page 4.
Okay,
Bottom of page 4.
got it.
So essentially, we'd still have the requirement for that you check identification, but it's at the merchant's discretion.
So are we just getting rid of the who
30.
appears to be?
Yes, yes.
Good.
Essentially,
That's a crazy thing to say.
that would be it.
Now, you would have the discretion to take out the requirement that they, as a, you know, this would be a separate requirement. You have to check everyone's ID. Now, you don't have to leave that in there. You could say, hey, you know, it's up to you whether you check ID, but if you don't, and someone underage buys, then you're in violation. So you have the discretion to either require or not require that they check everyone for ID.
And 7-Eleven is gonna be grandfathered in?
Yes. A couple more details, if I may, and then I'm going to bug Tom for one more recommendation that he made. Basically, a slight deviation from other ordinances that we have in place now that are violated is, in this case, it's a civil penalty and not a criminal penalty. And as such, we would have to appoint a hearing officer. I have made contact with our municipal court judge who thinks that he would be okay with that. That person gets appointed by the town manager, and so Tom's recommendation is that we actually do a formal appointment and not just a handshake deal on that. So, you know, I would follow through with that, and that person would have the ability to suspend or revoke or impose remedial sanctions, fines, on somebody that breaks the rule. And one thing that is important to note is we will be bringing back our fee schedule. I didn't want to put the fees or fines in this ordinance. I like to have them. I think we've made efforts in the past to consolidate those all into one place as opposed to having them riddled throughout the municipal code. So we will follow up with that, assuming there's a positive vote on this. And lastly, something that we've talked about for the last couple days with Bernie in discussion was I had taken language out of here that dealt with the enforcement side of it. So in other words, enforcement wouldn't be active enforcement, but it would be through complaint-based, which we do on some of our ordinances now. But in discussions that we had, I think that we would go a different way and bring this back on second reading with having enforcement language that would essentially outline that we would go and do enforcement, you know, perhaps twice a year, and leave that open. There's been some suggestion that we use decoys. So in other words, you send an underage person in and they try to buy, and if they you know make a successful buy, then we go and cite the clerk. But without knowing what resources will be available for that in the future, it's certainly something we can try. It's also difficult to get those people to set up a program for having people that will be decoys, and I can ask Greg to speak briefly to that. But we would suggest that we leave it open so that we have the option to do that, or we would also have the option for our officers to go in and do enforcement through, visual contact, like, for example, if there are displays that are out and within reach, or if we get a parent complaint or something like that we can follow up on. Greg, did you want to chime in on any of that?
So the difficulty with using undercover operatives or decoys or whatever that is one, the vetting process of how we vet them so that they don't have criminal histories, that you have to make sure that they're able to do this and able to testify in court down the road if needed. So that's one of the challenges that we were working with Eagle County to try and figure that out. It hasn't been formalized yet. And then just the philosophy of using underage individuals. Is that what we want to do? So
what are we recommending?
We would recommend that we have an enforcement provision in here, but that it allows us to be more flexible. It doesn't say you must use decoys twice per year to go in. It says, it contemplates that we can, if there's a policy or a provision to be able to do that. Right now, Eagle County has said that they would be able to help us with that, but we of course don't know the future of funding for that effort, and so that would be, perhaps an unanticipated expense. So we'd just like to leave it a little more open for that enforcement.
Did you have something, Tom?
Yeah, just quickly, then there's no legal requirement that you identify exactly how you're going to enforce.
Okay.
You can leave it flexible. Some of the ordinances we've seen do list specific things. It's optional, but I would agree with Ryan that we shouldn't make any particular enforcement mechanism obligatory, whether you list them, the options in the regulation or not.
Yes, Mr.
And
Brown.
I've been involved in conversations with Jackie and the people who are involved in raising it to age 21 and enforcement. And we have Mandy Ivanoff here from Eagle County, and it's been made clear to us that without enforcement, you're just creating a paper tiger, and that there needs to be meaningful enforcement. And I would say it may not be specifically mandated, but it's got to be mandated that we authorize enforcement, including undercover and decoy, without necessarily specifying how many times or when we do it. But I would want to see that amended language specify the possible use of decoy and undercover. And I don't know why we wouldn't feel most comfortable changing that section 154, just removing that wording, who appears to be under the age of 30, and let it stand that any person engaged in tobacco product retailing shall sell or transfer tobacco product to another without first examining the identification of the recipient to confirm their age 21. Yeah.
Okay, so here's the only, you can do that, and here's the only issue with it. That means it's a violation. If they don't card a 75-year-old person, it's a separate violation, whether or not that person is over age or not. That's the problem with it.
And so you're saying it's a 75-year-old if they don't card. So you're saying there is some common sense, but setting it at 30.
Well, I don't. In my view, you shouldn't have a requirement to automatically card everyone. And you certainly don't want the one who appears to be, because that's too subjective. In my view, you can just say you can't sell to someone who's underage.
Right.
And if you card such a person, you can't sell to anyone underage, and it's a defense to any charge that you violated the law, that you carded that person and found them to be 21 and over. So that means that, for younger folks and people in the gray area, you card them, and you have the liberty not to card someone who is clearly appears to be over the age of 21.
So you feel comfortable in the enforcement area with that?
I do.
Approach?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's
Well-
an absolute that you can't sell to anyone underage. It's a defense if you've carded the person and they're underage.
All right. So my main concern is that our added language on enforcement does specifically identify some steps, including use of decoys in underage operatives.
Including but not limited to.
That's
or
right.
something.
Exactly.
Very
Are we good yet? Everybody
We'll bring
good?
back that amended language for you at the second reading, assuming tonight.
Does anybody have any questions?
Go for it. Oh.
I've got a quick comment. Just reading the paper and having a little book report right here, right now, is that it has been reported that the city of Aspen, their tobacco 21, has brought in that the collections are outpacing the expected amounts. And they're saying that's not necessarily the point of it and not the aim, but it is showing to be a financially sustainable. They're outpacing what they would have collected from the state.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. I make a motion that an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, amending Chapter 6 of the Municipal Code of the Town of Basalt, Business Licenses and Regulations, to add a new Article 6 entitled Licensing of Tobacco Retailers.
Is there a second?
Got to set the first reading. in
Could
public.
I have,
Right.
ask
Forgot to
Bernie,
read
could I
that.
ask you
All right.
to do the rest of the motion?
And approve ordinance number 5, series of 218 on first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for March 27th, 2018.
Thanks, Bernie.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, Bernie, Brian, Greg, everybody.
John Boy.
John Boy, great.
Yeah, thank you, Mandy, for
Yeah,
coming.
thanks, Mandy. Thank you. Maybe we have some leftover dinner. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, renewal of Holy Cross franchise agreement, Ryan Mahoney.
Okay, so we have a current franchise agreement that is set to automatically renew on April 3rd. But I thought I would just bring it back to your attention. Our first 10 years with them has come and gone, and from all that I can tell, has been a successful relationship. This renewal essentially would carry forward with all of the provisions that are in the original ordinance, and some of those include, right now we get 3% of their quarterly revenues as a fee, basically, franchise fee, collected from the sale of electricity within the town. So in 2018, that is expected to be about $110,000. And Holy Cross has also committed a 1% of its previous year's gross revenues collected from the sale of electricity to our Community Enhancement Fund. And so we maintain that fund as a restricted fund, and we've used it for a variety of projects at the school to help fund baseball fields and climbing wall. I think we've done some tech enhancements for the school. And so there's a variety of things that we're able to use it for, and that this year is expected to bring about $38,000. And so I also, per the suggestion from council, reached out to CML. I reached out to some of our other neighboring communities that have franchise agreements. I didn't identify any emerging issues or additions that were of consequence to add to this. So my recommendation is really that we just let the 10-year extension move forward, and I would be looking this evening from a motion from you all just to solidify that.
Any questions on this item, or is there a motion?
Mayor, I move that the town council authorize renewal of the franchise agreement with Holy Cross for a 10-year period beginning on April 3rd, 2018, and extending and ending on April 3rd, 2028.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, public hearing and second reading of ordinance 2, an ordinance of the town authorizing the execution and delivery of a cable television, hey, is that the same one? Cable television system franchise agreement and the town of Basalt customer service standards between Comcast, all these states, and the town of Basalt. Brian?
Thank you. So if you recall, we had a work session 3 meetings ago, and Ken Fellman, who's been the counsel to represent a collective of communities that includes Pickens County, Snowmass, Aspen, and the town of Basalt, presented many of the details from the amended franchise. This one did change fairly considerably from what we had had in place before, and a couple of those details we actually were benefited from having our partners in there, and we will keep the exact same franchise fee that we had in place. That's anticipated to bring in about $78,000 in 2018. This franchise is set at 10 years as well. You're also adopting the customer service standards as part of this, and a few of the enhancements that we see are our PEG channels, so the public educational and government access channels that our constituents are watching us on right now.
Yeah, lots of them are watching
lots
right
and
now.
lots, yes, that's right. And so we have access to a greater number of those PEG channels, essentially. And then also Comcast is providing a $20,000 grant that will end up going to Aspen, but they are able to do the streaming of the PEG channel. So it's basically on demand. You can watch it from anywhere in the world. So if you're traveling, you're lucky. You get to watch this meeting. You don't have to miss it. And then also we would start collecting a fee that is currently collected by Aspen and Pitkin County, Snowmass, and if approved this evening, Basalt will end up collecting it. It's 50 cents per month per customer, and that's essentially a PEG fee is what they call it. It does get passed through, but it can be used for items such as our microphones, equipment, and things that help to enhance our use of PEG channels. So that would start and allow us to start investing in infrastructure that we've otherwise been doing through the general fund. So,
before we go to council, this is a public hearing, and it is the second reading of this ordinance. Is there anyone in the public that has any comments regarding this franchise agreement authorization? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Go to council for questions, comments, or motions.
I want to commend looking technologically tonight, the wire setup on Student of the Month. We didn't have anyone trip, and it looks really, really good tonight, and so thank you, whoever set it up.
It's out of the main flow.
Yes.
Yeah, I always wonder.
So I will move that the town council adopt ordinance number 2, series of 2018 on second reading.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everybody. Okay, public hearing and second reading of ordinance 3, an ordinance of the town authorizing borrowing on a line of credit for the purpose of purchasing affordable housing for the town of Basalt. Judy Tippett.
These are taper requirements.
We might want to get the microphone over there.
Sorry. So just a reminder, these are tabor disclosures. So this is a line of credit that it currently exists. We have 18 affordable housing units. We have one more soon to close, which would bring us up to 19. But this is a revolving line of credit. We did leave a little bit of money in there if we have to do anything to obtain that unit, but as it looks like now, that would be transferred to the town. So again, this is an existing line of credit that we already have, and it's for housing, the affordable housing that we have on the books, and this is a Tabor requirement disclosure.
Okay. Anybody? Do you have anything else to say, Ryan, about it? Okay. Jennifer.
I have a quick question about this and the next item. Is there a reason that we do 12-month fixed?
Because a municipality, we cannot do multi-year funding, so we have to do this. You can't obligate future boards. So every year you'll hear the same one over and over.
Okay.
Multi-year financial commitments require taxpayer approval by vote.
Okay. And then just off the top of your head, do you know what the rate was, the interest rate for 2016? Or for 2017?
They're 3.25, so.
Okay, so it's held steady through the years?
Yep.
Okay, great.
And our payment is $227?
The payment on this particular one, we take the differential. We don't have an established payment. We
Okay.
take the difference between what we're bringing in for affordable housing rent, and we've been paying down the difference on those. So if we have, say, $100,000 on for new roof and some other improvements we've done to, particularly the BC building was in pretty sad shape. So we'll take the difference and we'll apply that as a principal reduction.
Okay. Is that going to pay it off sooner?
Yeah, I mean, it's restricted, so there's not like we're competing to use it for wages for police or parks or something, so, yeah, so we do, cash flow wise, we have what we need to keep things rolling for all of the affordable housing units, but as much as we can, I do a principal reduction.
Got it. Yes.
And can we do, has the closing cost been $1,000 every single year? Maybe since we're such a good business partner with Alpine Bank, that could be negotiated?
Yeah, you have no idea. Yeah, no, this is a really good rate, so, yeah.
Good try.
Our
I'm gonna try.
Our COPs would have been almost 100,000.
Thank you.
So for $1,000, we'll take it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Judy.
Okay.
I just have one small thing. Just for the record, can we update Tom's letter?
Yes, it's been updated.
Yeah, Pam had him sign an earlier
Pam
one
has them
today.
dated today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tom was tied
And then
up.
also the date of all the documents. Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, Tom was tied up last week, and then I did get these from Uwani this week, so they're the current ones with the current dates and.
This is also a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing at 7:29. Is there anyone in the public that has any comments, questions on this? Hearing none, close the public hearing. Council, comments, questions, motions?
I motion the town council approve ordinance number 3, series of 2018 on second reading.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, good on that one. Public hearing and second reading of ordinance 4, an ordinance of the town authorizing borrowing on a line of credit for the purpose of constructing an underpass at Basalt Avenue for the town of Basalt. Judy?
So this one is very similar to the one that we just talked about. Again, it's a Tabor requirement that we do a disclosure on this, so you'll see inside your budget that it says that we would pay off the full $2 million. That is not our intent. We're going to do $650,000 3 years in a row, and it's coming out of post dollars, and it was the piece that we needed cash flow wise after we used everybody else's money to finish our underpass. So.
Oh, this is public hearing as well. Open the public hearing. Any comments from the public? Yes, sir, please come up to the microphone.
I just want to thank you guys for getting underpass done. It's a really good asset for the town.
Say that in the microphone, and then you can.
Just want to thank you guys for getting the underpass done. I think it's a really good asset for our town.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks for thanking us.
Thanks for thanking us.
Thank you.
Thank you for thanking me for thanking. Okay, so we'll close the public hearing and.
Just same update on that letter.
Yes, and Tom, yeah, he signed those right before the meeting. Pam had him sign up,
Yeah,
clean
just-
copies. Yep.
Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 4, series of 2018 on second reading.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Judy. Thank you, council.
Thank you.
Okay, that is the end of our public meeting. Our next item is an executive session. Did somebody say eat? Like stop? Oh, okay. Our next item is an executive session for purposes of discussing personnel matters in accordance with CRS 246402-4F, more specifically, review of Town Attorney Tom Smith, and we will remain in executive session for purposes of discussing personnel matters in accordance with the same statute, more specifically, review of Town Manager Ryan Mahoney. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move the town council enter executive session for purpose of discussing personnel matters in accordance with CRS 246402-4F as noted, more specifically review of the town manager Ryan Mahoney and review of the town attorney Tom Smith.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So Tom, can we have 10 minutes and then we'll call you back in? Okay, let's wait till he's...
So we're going to go ahead and shut down everything but the microphones this time. And I'm going to go ahead and switch to the executive session tape. Okay, so
do we need to have tapes running?
yes.
Okay,
If it's not.
just hers.
For your recording, Pam, if it's
Just no live stream. Okay, my mics are running. Somebody say something, please.
Hello?
Hello, hello, hello.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And so you and I'll, stream is off, so you and I will leave the room.